70 years after its declaration of independence, India is witnessing an unprecedented revolution in its history. Thanks to exceptional economic growth, a growing young middle class is leading the country toward new horizons. And wine, which has long been invisible in this society, is slowly finding its place in their daily life. Despite an unfavorable social context, both cultural and religious, viticulture is gradually expanding across agricultural lands. These days, drinking wine is becoming part of the immense modernization movement that has seized the country. Visionary pioneers have planted the country's first vineyards, mainly in two fertile regions of India, Karnataka and Maharashtra. We are in the Nashik area in the northern state of Maharashtra, a 4-hour drive from Bombay. Set high on a vast plateau, this fertile valley, traditionally dedicated to growing fruit, has recently found a new purpose.
Nashik has a beautiful climate because of its altitude, and also because you come up into the Western Ghats. You come slightly into the rain shadow region. So you don't have as much rain as what you have on the coast. And because you are 600 meters up, you have beautiful cool nights, warm, hot days. So you have a big temperature difference, which gives you beautiful acidity and flavors in the grapes. I feel very happy to be back, because I see everything around me that is so familiar, and a lot of things that I have myself, helped to build or been the builder of, so it makes me very happy. I feel peaceful.
Rajiv Samant is the man who brought viticulture to India. He created the country's first vineyards, which produced the greatest volume of wine, Sula Wineyards. It's late April, a few weeks after the harvest. Peasants are busy stripping the vines. Every year during this season, Rajiv is back on his estate to take stock of the harvest. He now lives between Bombay and London and sees his vineyard only a few days a month.
Here we are in a place where 40, 50 years ago, there was literally nothing. All there was grass this tall in this entire valley, this Gangapur valley. There were leopards, cobras, lots of cobras, rabbits, so lots of wildlife, and a few people living in a small village over here, basically having no jobs and getting by some subsistence farming and by hunting rabbits with bows and arrows. And when I arrived here, there was no wine being produced in this region of Nashik. I was the first. And the reason that I saw that potential was because there were already some grapes, but all the grapes were for eating and for raisins. There was nothing for wine. And I came here, I had just come back from California. This was the early 90s. I'd started drinking wine back in California. I enjoyed it. Came here and I said, but you have so many grapes and nobody is making wine. So here is the very first vines that we planted way back in 1997. And from this, Sula has grown.
For Rajiv, it's an annual visit, an unmissable date. Once the fruit is in the tanks, he meets with his oenologist Karan to taste the first must together, and they imagine the wine to come. Karan has also trained in the United States. India doesn't yet have a winemaking school or any professional training in viticulture.
Okay, so some
Grenache
Grenache Rosé 19.
from the new vintage.
That's exactly the color we want. Rosé, but tending towards gray. That's what we like. Perfect.
This is the color I think that the Indian consumer now also wants. As the consumer is becoming more affluent, more well-traveled, and more exposed to what's going on worldwide, this is what they want to see in our wines as well. And I think this is all set now to do
I agree.
really well.
I agree.
So, cheers.
Cheers, perfect.
In just a few years, Rajiv Samant has managed to increase Sula's wine production to place it among the world's largest wine-growing operations. And this in a country where wine was almost non-existent. He also imagined his vineyard as an amusement park entirely dedicated to the discovery of wine and the art de vivre that wine accompanies. With almost 1 million visitors a year, Sula is the most visited vineyard in the world. Yet this wine adventure began somewhat by chance.
So my father, this land here, he bought it, he had a vision to divide it and put up some maybe houses, etc. He never got permission, he never had enough money to do it. So we came out here one day with a broker who wanted to pay us 300 euros an acre for the land. And I said, what, are you crazy? And that's how the whole thing started. When I said, no, Dad, don't sell this land, Baba, I call him. I would love to do something here. There's something about this place. There's a feeling about it. And I really feel some sort of great vibe here. I remember very clearly, that time we still used to write letters, we didn't have email and all. And I'd written to my friends in California saying, look, I'm growing grapes. And one of my friends, an old girlfriend, wrote back to me and said, oh wow, are you making wine? And I still have that letter. And I'm just trying to think back as to what was the moment when I said, why not wine? And I definitely think that that letter I received with somebody who I knew well asking me, wow, are you going to make wine? Was probably one of those aha moments. Well, last year we did 12 million bottles, so it's come a long way. And we are only scratching the surface, because what I love to say is that when we started, India was drinking 1 teaspoon of wine per person. That's the consumption in India. In France it's like 30 liters, in the UK it's 15 liters. India was 1 teaspoon. Today we have reached 1 tablespoon. Today we have reached 1 tablespoon. So there is a long way still to go, and we want to be very much part of that journey, leading that journey, and it makes me very excited, very happy.
This slow evolution is due to the many cultural obstacles to wine consumption. Yet paradoxically, while religion does not see it favorably, viticulture first developed in one of the country's holiest valleys. A few miles from Sula, in the city of Nashik, thousands of pilgrims concentrate around the Godavari River. It is said that this sacred river receives drops of the nectar of immortality. All who bathe 3 times in these waters are thought to be purified. This is where the ashes of Indira Gandhi were spread on the water. The Hindu religion is ubiquitous in Indians' daily life. And even though it does not officially prohibit the consumption of alcohol, over the centuries, alcohol's position has remained ambiguous, and so Indians remained relatively uninterested. Even Gandhi tried to ban it in the Constitution, considering that it contributed to England's domination of India. Until today, vines had never really taken root in India. Yet there are very old traces of wine consumption. It was actually the drink of kings. Professor Meher Mistry, historian at the University of Bombay, immersed herself in ancient texts and made some amazing discoveries.
The perception nowadays is that India never had a wine consumption culture, but that is not true. We see even in the medieval period, although there was no state policy favoring wine consumption, but the emperors themselves were fond of consuming wine, and among the aristocracy, as I told you, there was a lot of wine consumption. So it's not some new trend which has started in India. Wine consumption and wine manufacture has been a part of Indian tradition. The British experimented various kinds of grapes, and they tried to introduce grapes in the Deccan region, in Baramati, in Kashmir, and even in the Punjab areas also grapes of various qualities were being produced so that wine could be manufactured from that. The English succeeded for some time, but later on the vineyards suffered to an American bug. This was sometime around 1850s. After that, they did not proceed much with experiments in viticulture. I really found it very difficult to find many books or documents on it. So there is a little bit of documentation, but it has not been much emphasized, because especially after the nationalist movement, the government has favored abstinence as a policy.
Despite these cultural and political obstacles, wine consumption is growing at an amazing rate, 15% each year. Thanks to this craze, new faces are appearing in the Indian wine landscape. 2 years ago, Ravi Viswanathan, originally from Pondicherry, decided to buy Groversampa, one of the country's largest winemaking farms.
Wine has always been a passion for me since I was barely of legal drinking age. But in order to sustain a passion, you need economics that make sense. So the idea is to grow this business sufficiently so it becomes a viable, self-sustaining, profitable business. But the focus will always be and always remain high-quality wines.
It's harvest time. In a few weeks, the first monsoons will flood the soil for almost 2 months. This is an important moment for Ravi, but also for the area's inhabitants. In the vineyards, they've found an unexpected source of income and sustenance. For most of these women, caring for vines is a new profession. In just a few seasons, they've learned how to harvest, to trim, and take cuttings. They all come from small villages in the area, and the vineyard is the first and only job provider in this secluded corner of the countryside.
India is so new to wine, and the climate is so different from the rest of the world. We are almost one of the rare countries to do viticulture in tropical climate. There are many things to discover, many things to experiment. We have great latitude and freedom to experiment with new technologies, in the viticulture, in the vineyard.
Trained in France, Ravi is an engineer who now puts his money and love of technology in the service of his made in India wine. With the French enologist Mathias Pélissard, Ravi deploys unprecedented means to bring his family property up to the level of the world's greatest wine houses by offering his teams the most advanced technologies in the world.
We have a choice with almost 16 programs, and we can put in more, allowing us to follow the maturity of the grapes to make different selections. We can choose to eject withered grapes, those that are damaged.
That's what we don't like, the color or the form.
The color, the form, or both, which makes it possible to have less greenery in the cuvées, to have a more homogeneous, better quality cuvée. We lose a little in quantity, but in quality, we clearly gain 20 to 30%. For now, it's been programmed only for the red. The idea next year is to use it for Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and make other programs for the white. That's the next challenge.
By the way, Manjunath, this is the first machine of its kind in India.
Yeah,
And only the third one in the world, according to the manufacturer.
proud to be.
And my guess is that the other two machines have not been used yet for harvesting because they are probably somewhere in the northern hemisphere. So we are probably the first one in the world to
start.
use it.
Yeah.
So our main challenge, and now we are looking all over the country, is to find good soil where we can plant the grapes for future consumption. Where we are helped is that, contrary to most beliefs, grapes for wine need a poor soil, not fertile, rocky, on slopes, typically a soil which is not wanted by other crops. So we are not really fighting against other crops. Most of the land we plant is actually land which is usually not been used before. That's the easy part. The tough part is to find it.
How to grow again and again in order to seize the great opportunities presented by wine. You must acquire land, and for that, you must also know how to circumvent the subtleties of the Indian legislation that limits the expansion of land within the same state. To develop, Ravi has no choice but to settle beyond the borders of Karnataka, which is what he is doing in Maharashtra, some 600 miles from his main vineyard. He will cover this desert with vines, but also build everything needed to support the vineyard.
So this is like the highest point of the hill, so it has the best views on 360 degrees. So as you were discussing with me earlier, if we could build out some of the vineyard going up here, and we could have the presidential suites, more than one happening over here.
All right, that looks great. This is the bar, right?
Yes.
This will be a bit scary, but it's okay.
So this is also going to be a surprise from them because they'll come from normal standard floor to like almost an invisible floor.
That will be
that'll be their view looking down and 360 degrees.
And we'll have vineyards on both sides anyway. Yeah. Now my zip line will fly over, right?
Yes, over this.
We'll be able to fly over the amphitheater, over the bar, over the vineyards, and then land into the winery.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yes. So the whole concept of the spacing as an architect is to bring in people to experience wine, where it starts from, where it's grown, where it's bottled, and to experience fresh wine and to understand about wine, how it's made and how it can be experienced and how the place from where it comes makes a difference. And they can also see it first hand as to where they're growing it and how the weather and the landscape and the terrain changes the taste of the wine.
Most of these new wine lovers will come from cities. This revolution of tastes and lifestyles is above all among the affluent social category, composed of men, but also women in search of emancipation, who could never have imagined 2 decades ago that they'd be drinking wine today. In this country, where freedom and independence for women is still being conquered, it is a symbol, and paradoxically, it is a woman who is the only person in India to hold the supreme title of Master of Wine. a distinction shared by only a tiny handful of the world's best oenologists. She is Sonal Holland. A Bombay native, she has started a crusade for the recognition of wine in her country.
To everybody, it is a symbol of sophistication, classy beverage. It's definitely more socially acceptable, particularly among the women who traditionally may have not been more averse to drinking alcohol, which was more considered traditionally a male-dominated area. And the best part is that this is only the beginning.
One evening a month, in one of Bombay's very first wine bars, Sonal invites a panel of young women for an exclusively female moment. This master of wine offers an introduction to the art of wine tasting, its vocabulary and its codes, making wine a new part of being oneself and to asserting oneself in society.
Hi, I'm Sonal Holland. And you may wonder what the purpose of this tasting is, really. I mean, why taste blind? Yeah, why not just be told? What I'm requesting of you is simply taste the wines one after the other. Is this a high-priced wine versus a low-priced wine? Would you be able to smell price in a glass? So basically, I'd like you to rank them. Okay, so has everyone tasted? Yep. Okay, now let's go through every wine one by one and just come up with some comments. So should we start with wine number one? For those of you who thought number one was the best wine, Sunita, did you like one the most?
It doesn't have a very long finish, it has a medium finish, but it's nicely balanced in the mouth.
Nice.
So that's why I like it.
That's a good observation. Okay, any other comments?
It was just soothing.
Soothing, that's a good word. It was soothing, smooth, what else?
Yeah, it was too aggressive and too heavy. It kind of just hits you in the face. That's the first, like a bad boyfriend kind of thing.
Oh my God. Like a what? A bad boyfriend?
I thought that was a good
Okay,
word.
that's good. I like that explanation. Niti, tell us why you enjoyed wine number two the most.
It's a nice one which you can have conversations over. Like the first one was like eating like a fruit basket. I didn't like the first one.
Okay, so she thought the first wine was a fruit basket and the second one was a bit more mysterious and it had layers and it kind of opened up a little bit. And by the way, a wine does change in a glass.
Yeah.
Balance is extremely important in a wine. And what does balance mean? Exactly how you described it. A bit of everything, but everything sits in perfect harmony. So the next time you're poured a glass of wine, someone offers you a wine and you don't know what the wine is, the best way to assess it is look for these four factors. I like to refer to this acronym as BLIC. So BLIC is balance, length, intensity, and complexity. So now that we've gone through this session, don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Let your own palates be the best judge of what wines you enjoy.
In his irresistible conquest of Indian society, wine is now at the heart of traditional ceremonies. Ravi is arranging the last details of a big wedding.
Hi, Punesh, how are you? I hope everything is ready. I'm planning to be in Bangalore for your daughter's wedding this weekend. And my sommeliers will be ready to help if you need any explanation of what to do with the wines. All right, see you this weekend. Bye.
Now, wine is invited to the wedding table. It's an object of desire and discovery, gradually becoming a companion to Indians. Tonight, Ravi's Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc will accompany the party. Symbols of a society in transformation. Wine is evolving, becoming emancipated, as it continues to spread and conquer new territories. Its presence is a way of expressing to the world that here in India, it's the dawn of a new era.